Today I'm in London and I've got my little travel studio with me and we're off to Jaeger-LeCoultre to check out their new Reversos. So these are the two new Reversos that have been launched. One is clearly very traditional and the other is really very complex. We've got a Reverso Tribute Monoface and then we've got a Reverso Tribute Duoface Tourbillion. Let's start off with the Monoface. This is a very small watch, but there's a reason for that. The case is stainless steel. It's 24.4 millimeters wide and 40.1 millimeters lug to lug. Now those measurements don't really make any sense because it's a rectangle watch. It's one of those watches you do just have to try on. It's 7.56 millimeters thick and it has this blue sunray lacquered dial. The movement inside is a proper in-house JLC movement. This is the caliber 822. It's a manual wind movement and has 42 hours of power reserve. It also has 21 joules and it beats slower than most watch movements. It beats at 21,600 vibrations per hour. This thing costs 8,000 euros. And the reason the thing is so small is because it's actually based on the original Reverso that was launched in 1931. This is very not quite true to the original case, but it's based on the original case. The original case from 1931 was 38 millimeters long, 24 millimeters wide, and 6 millimeters thick. You'll see with the next Reverso, it has a face on both sides, which is why it's given the name Duoface. And you'll see with this Reverso, it only has face on one side, hence the name Monoface. So this is more true to the original Reverso and the purpose of the Reverso. The Reverso was created, as the story goes, to be a polo player's watch. The idea was guys who were playing polo kept having their watches smashed by either the balls or, what do they use? Rackets? Sticks? The implements of polo. The watches just kept getting cracked whilst guys were playing polo. So the idea was Jaeger-LeCoultre came up with this Reverso design. So when guys played polo, they'd simply flip over the watch and then it'd be protected by this steel case. I mean, you could just take the watch off, couldn't you? You can't tell the time when the watch is flipped over, and you equally can't tell the time if you're not wearing the watch. So, but we're watch geeks. It's more fun when we overcomplicate things. We get enjoyment from that. And talking about overcomplicating things, this next watch is massively complicated. Let's check it out. This is the Duoface, the Reverso Tribute Duoface Tourbillon. On one side, it's a very simple watch, time only, with the little window showing you the tourbillon behind it. And then you flip it over and we have a much more complicated dial. This essentially is you just looking at the movement. This also has a stainless steel case, but it's slightly larger at 27.4 millimeters wide. It's 45.5 millimeters long, 9.15 millimeters thick. On one side, this has a burst gray sunray dial, and on the other side, it has a Clou de Paris guilloche dial. The movement side, this one is, of course, also an in-house JLC movement. This is the caliber 847. It's a manual wind movement. It obviously has a tourbillon. It has 31 joules and beats at 21,600 vibrations an hour. And this one costs 100,000 euros. One side of the dial is the more dressy function of this watch. It's time only and has that little window showing you the tourbillon. But when you flip the dial over, when you reverse the Reverso, you get this massively complex, massively complicated dial. The hours and minute hands of this side aren't connected to the other side. This is a second time zone. We also have a day-night indicator on the top right corner, and then the tourbillon itself has a second track because the tourbillon spins one full rotation every minute. Now there's a really fun thing around engine-turned dials with Jaeger-LeCoultre. I visited their factory, I think 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, and I met the lady, the one lady who does all engine turn dials for Jaeger-LeCoultre, and that wasn't even her job. She had some other function at the factory, but she kept seeing this really interesting 100-year-old engine turn machine. She started to teach herself how to use it after her normal job and ended up becoming an absolute expert, an absolute artisan in this process. So every single Jaeger-LeCoultre watch that has an engine turn pattern on any part of the watch has been done by this one lady. And I think that's pretty cool. It really hits home how small the production of Jaeger-LeCoultre is, but also how hands-on and true watchmaking they are. Let's talk quickly about the Tourbillon. So this spinning thing is a Tourbillon, and it was originally designed for pocket watches. A pocket watch would typically sit within your pocket, and so it'd be stuck in one orientation for a long period of time. So the idea of the Tourbillon is that it spins, it rotates a whole escapement around 360, so the gravity pull isn't just on one part, in one orientation of the escapement of the movement, it's pulling it in all orientations of the movement, so then evens out the impact of gravity on the escapement. Because we no longer keep our watches in one orientation like a pocket watch, our hands are naturally moving all over the place, and so naturally gravity is being evened out throughout the escapement. Tourbillons aren't really that impactful in a watch now. But today, they're used as a mark of watchmaking ability because they are very complex to make. The Tourbillon itself has 62 parts inside and weighs less than half a gram. So this stuff really is high-end watchmaking, especially when you think about finishing. Finishing these tiny little components must be a pain in the ass, to be fair, but the results looks brilliant. I love the contrast between the dressy side of this watch and then the industrial look of the other side. We have this partially skeletonized dial, and then we've got this engine-turned clou de Paris gear shape pattern on the plates. And then I love the typography, the design, the industrial, the rawness of that seconds track around the outside of the Tourbillon. It's a really interesting contrast. And I guess it's the perfect way to do it, is to have, if you're gonna have a two-faced watch, is to have one dressy and one really quite interesting. Jaeger-LeCoultre haven't sponsored this video, so let's check out some alternatives of these watches. Firstly, let's check out some alternatives to the Monoface. First up, at £995, we have the Fedri Constant Classic Carry Automatic. It of course doesn't have the Reverso function, but it very much has the Reverso styling with the rectangle case, the multiple textures on the dial, and then obviously the very traditional design of the dial itself. Next up, we've got the Longines Dolce Vita, and this is slightly larger at 27mm wide by 43mm tall. Again, doesn't have the Reverso function, but very much has the styling. Now, of course, when we talk about alternatives and the Reverso, there's always going to be a Cartier in the mix. This is the Tank Must. This is the extra large version, which has the automatic movement inside, and it is an absolutely killer watch. This one is £4,800. Now, finding alternatives for the Duoface with the Tourbillon is really quite tricky because nothing, I feel, actually ticks all of the boxes. So I've kind of gone with the rectangle shapes with complications. We'll start with the budget version. This is £76,000. This is the Tank Century skeleton, and more of the dial of this is see-through than not see-through, and that's pretty wild. But it is super long, super elongated. It's 23mm wide and 46mm long, but this is in platinum. Next up, we've got a Frank Mueller. This is the Long Island Rose Gold Tourbillon. I have to say, Frank Mueller, your website is utter shit. I like your watches. You have really interesting designs. I love the typography of your watches in particular, but your website is f***ing awful. I only have this view of the watch. If this is what it looks like, then fantastic. I have no idea what this watch looks like from other angles. And then the third alternative, a bit more of a happier feeling towards this one. This is a Breguet Heritage 5497. This costs £140,000. It's in rose gold and also has a tourbillon. Again, it doesn't have the Reverso function. Jaeger-LeCoultre really have dominated this flipping watch function. It's a very, very smart way. The original design of it was a clever idea, but the way that they've taken that and just exploded it into highly complex watches that are still relatively thin, given the fact that all this stuff is shoved into such a small space. That is really impressive. Guys, what do you think of these additions to this massively iconic lineup? For me, the standout is this highly complex, gorgeous Duoface tourbillon. It's just a lot of money. 100 grand is it's a lot of cash. Let me know your thoughts on these watches. What are your thoughts on my alternatives? And have I missed a trick with not finding a proper alternative to the Reverso design? Let me know in the comments down below. I haven't plugged any of my products. I guess I could plug this. Really nice. True enamel mug. This isn't a fake tin mug that's being covered in some sort of coating. This is the real deal enamel mug. This has an iron core, and then the whole thing is baked to create the enamel finishing. This is done by a company that's been doing this stuff for over 100 years. Killer mugs. Look great on Instagram too. Check them out. And watch straps. over at barkandjack.com. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you like this style of this video, then hit the subscribe button down there and that little bell icon so you get notifications when I drop a new video. If you're on Instagram, give me a follow at barkandjack, and I will see you guys very soon, in a week. Take care. No, less than a week. Probably, I don't know, 5 days. I'll see you. Hit the bell icon. It doesn't matter when the videos go up. It will let you know.